The first bell of the morning echoed through the wide halls of Crestwood High, a building where whispers carried faster than truth. That morning, a soft murmur spread before the students had even finished their coffees. The new English teacher's here. No one knew much about her, only that she'd been transferred from another district, that she was young, and that her name was Miss Alina Ward. Her first footsteps into the hallway were almost too quiet for such a noisy school. She wore a simple beige sweater, black slacks, and carried a stack of books against her chest like armor. Her eyes were calm, observant, the kind of eyes that could see through excuses and fake smiles. The students didn't know it yet, but beneath her soft voice and kind manners was a woman who'd lived through storms far worse than teenage cruelty. She'd seen cities fall silent in fear. She'd been trained in control patience and, when necessary, power. But she didn't come to fight. She came to teach. At first, her class was curious but harmless. She smiled when they tested her, ignored the whispers when they mocked her accent, and gently corrected the ones who rolled their eyes. But in every school, there's always a group that feeds on weakness, or what they think is weakness. That group was led by Dylan Cross, a tall 17-year-old senior with a charming grin and a cruel streak. His followers, Mason and Luke, were shadows that laughed when he did and mocked when he gestured. Together, they ruled the halls like kings. Teachers avoided conflict with them. Students looked away. Even the principal, tired and overworked, turned a blind eye as long as the grades stayed high. When Dylan first met Miss Ward, he thought she was easy prey. "You're new here, right?" he said, leaning on her desk after class, blocking her path. "You might want to know how things work around here." Elena smiled politely, sliding a paper into her folder. "I'll figure it out," she said softly. He smirked. "Some of us can make your days easier or harder." Her eyes lifted slowly to meet his. There was no fear, no flinch, just a calm, piercing stillness that made him hesitate for a heartbeat. Then she smiled again and said, "Threats are just noise, Dylan. Eventually, they fade." The classroom fell silent for a moment. Mason laughed awkwardly.
"She got you, bro,"
he said, trying to ease the tension. But Dylan's grin froze. For the first time, someone hadn't flinched, hadn't bowed to his tone. That was the start of it. The irritation that turned into obsession. Over the next week, small things began happening. Chalk dust spilled over her lesson notes. Her mug disappeared. Someone drew a mocking caricature of her on the board before class. Alina didn't react. She simply erased it, smiled at her students, and continued teaching. But silence can be the sharpest weapon. It frustrated Dylan. Every time she didn't react, he pushed further. One afternoon after class, Alina went to the library, the one quiet place she truly loved. Rows of books lined the tall shelves, sunlight filtering through the high windows, dust motes floating like ghosts. She ran her fingers across old literature volumes and smiled. For a moment, she felt peace, but that peace shattered with a single voice. Well, look who's hiding in the library." Dylan stepped in with Mason and Luke behind him. The librarian had just left. Perfect timing. The heavy door clicked shut. Alina turned slowly, her calm expression unchanged. "You should be studying," she said gently. Mason laughed. "We thought we'd study you, Miss Ward." They spread out, forming a loose triangle around her. Dylan leaned closer. "You act like you're not scared of us. Maybe it's time you learned your place." Alina set her books down on the table. "My place?" she repeated softly. "You're standing too close, Dylan." He smirked, stepping even closer. "Or what?" She exhaled, slow, measured. Something in her posture shifted. Her shoulders straightened, feet slightly apart, eyes sharpening like a blade. Mason noticed first. Dude, something's off." Alina looked at Dylan, her voice low. "I said step back." Dylan laughed and reached out to grab her arm, but before his fingers could close, her hand moved. A blur of precision. She twisted his wrist and turned him sideways in one fluid motion. A thud echoed as his back hit the table edge. Mason froze. Luke took a step back. Alina didn't raise her voice. "You need to understand something," she said quietly, her tone steady but powerful. "I don't start fights, but I end them." Dylan tried to push back, but she held his wrist firm with minimal effort. Her control was surgical, not rage, not panic, just calm dominance. Then she released him, letting him stumble backward. "Leave," she said simply. For a moment, the boys didn't move. Then Mason grabbed Dylan's shoulder. "Come on, man." They backed away slowly, glaring but saying nothing. Elena picked up her book again as if nothing had happened. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She just turned a page and whispered, "You'll learn better ways to prove strength, boys." Eventually, outside, Dylan's pride burned hotter than pain. He couldn't believe what had just happened. In front of his friends, no less. His jaw clenched. She thinks she's tough. No one embarrasses me. And in that hallway, under the flickering light, something darker began to form in his mind. The next time they cornered her, it wouldn't be just intimidation. Inside the library, Alina stood alone between the shelves, staring out the window. She knew this wasn't over. She had seen those kinds of eyes before, boys who mistake kindness for weakness. She sighed softly, pressing her hand against her heart, whispering words only she could hear, "Don't lose control again." Because she knew what she was capable of if pushed too far. That night, the rumors spread like wildfire. She took Dylan down. "She's some kind of fighter. Did you see her eyes? Cold as ice." Every student had a different version of the story. Some exaggerated it, some romanticized it. But one thing was certain, everyone now looked at Miss Ward differently. In the teacher's lounge the next morning, whispers floated behind her back. She must have been in the military. "I heard she used to train cops. Maybe that's why she transferred here." Elena just smiled faintly, pouring herself a cup of coffee. She wasn't here for fame or fear. She was here to teach, but she knew this peace wouldn't last long. The human ego, once bruised, always comes back swinging, and Dylan wasn't done. Later that day, she found a note on her desk. No name, no signature. Just a few words written in bold D. "You'll regret touching me." She folded the note carefully and slipped it into her drawer. Her face betrayed nothing, but her eyes, calm, steel gray, hardened slightly. That afternoon, as rain started tapping on the library windows, she stayed behind again, reorganizing papers, waiting for the storm to pass. She didn't realize someone was already watching from the hallway shadows, waiting for the door to close, for the librarian to leave, for the perfect moment to strike again. The library lights flickered once. Then the handle turned, and that's when everything changed.